3, 2, 1. Welcome to The Peaceful Truth, the podcast where we talk about everything from women empowerment, women's issues, and everything in between. You're joined by your co-hosts, which are Kenzie Meekback and
Meghan Howard.
Woohoo! Welcome back or welcome for the first time to The Peaceful Truth.
I want to start off with a shout out to our Australian listeners.
Yeah, so we were looking at analytics today. We found out have 10 listens from Australia.
Shout out to Australia. That's awesome.
Either we have one listener or a few, but if you are listening in Australia, that's so cool.
And I want to know how you found us.
Yeah, tweet at us. Okay, so we're at podcast2pt, or if you're on any of the social media platforms, we're on all of them. So reach out.
So we'll kick off like normal by going over our weeks. And then we're also going to talk about this episode. We're going to talk about PodCon because we literally just got back from it 10 minutes ago.
A podcast convention.
Yep, in Seattle. It was really fun.
It was.
But first for our weeks, Kenzie, what did you do this week?
Great questions, as always.
As always, Kenzie doesn't remember.
My week was pretty good. I got 3 drinks today.
3 drinks?
Remember?
Oh, yes, you did. I thought you meant alcohol drink.
No, I haven't had any alcohol today.
Yeah,
so
she did.
I haven't had alcohol today.
No, I know, but she comes back. We had like an hour and a half break, and she comes back to the table with 3 different drinks.
Okay, so I like beverages, and I like options. Sometimes I'm in the mood for 3 drinks, so I'm going to buy all 3.
She bought a water bottle, she bought a coffee, and she bought a lemonade.
And I can explain all 3. Water is for hydration, coffee is for energy, and lemonade is for fun.
Lemonade is for fun. Exactly. I've thought that thought multiple times in my life. Lemonade is for fun.
I really love lemonade.
She was craving it. I don't know why. You were definitely
You're going to
craving it,
put
though.
out conspiracy theories there into the podcast. But anyway, this week, what can I never remember? Can you recite my week better than me?
You went to work during the week. You had You had a fairly good week at work.
Oh, Tuesday was Chelsea's pop-up.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So I went to Chelsea's pop-up. I feel like I did something Wednesday, or I relaxed on Wednesday. And then, yeah, so I can't remember anything. But
and then last night she made Christmas cookies.
Last night I made Christmas cookies, which was super cool, and they tasted quite nice.
Perfect.
What did you do this weekend?
My week was good. I went to work, did that. Work is really good. And then Monday night I went to Kirtan with Rob and Melissa, a devotional form of yoga. They've been in India for 2 months, and this was the first time I got to see them, and I was so happy to see them.
How was the trip?
Awesome. I'm going to lunch with Melissa on Sunday, and so I'll get to hear all about it. I'm really excited.
How cool.
And yeah, and I'm going to like save up money because they're going in 2018 in November.
Ooh.
So I'm already going to save up money for me to
Well,
go
that's a
with
lot,
them.
but you have to book it far in advance.
You got to book it far in advance. You got to get like, just to step into India territory, you have to have a certain type of visa.
Oh, wow. You don't.
It's not just a
besides
passport.
Oh, okay.
It's like a visitor visa.
That's crazy.
I know. Even only for 1 week. And the flight is literally like a 24-hour flight. They're literally like 18 hours ahead of us.
Okay. So someone is hammering a picture next door. So either we're just going to have hammering in the background.
I don't know what we're going to do.
This is the problem when you film a podcast in your house.
In a city.
In the city. Okay. Well,
I'm sorry that our neighbors are apparently hanging a picture frame.
I don't know what they're doing.
It sounds really close.
Yeah. Hey, we're trying to film a podcast. Stop hammering.
Maybe they heard. Do you think they heard?
I don't know. I hope so.
So, then the rest of the week was good. A lot of yoga. I taught yoga. And I did a lot of yoga. And then this weekend we went to the PodCon, which was awesome, which is what we're going to be talking about. So do you want to kick things off about how our PodCon experience was?
Yeah, I will say overall, I learned things, which is what I wanted from the podcast. I'm also a podcast fan. Although I will be very blunt, I did not previously listen to any of the said podcast people that were famous there. I did know it was run and hosted by, it was like thought of and hosted by Hank Green, which he's a part of YouTube, a famous YouTuber, and he does Dear John and Hank, or Hank and John, I forget which order it is, with his brother John Green, who's an author of several books I've read. So I knew who they were, and I knew of Lore, which is a very famous podcast. But it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed listening to a few that was live taped, and I will maybe subscribe to them as well, because there was Criminal, Dear Hank and John, or John and Hank, I forget, and also Lore, which I've been meaning to subscribe to anyway. I thought did I?
Okay.
Oh, okay. And Criminal.
So should we just start off about some of the workshops that we went to and like some of the podcasts we got to listen to?
Yeah. So I also learned stuff from the workshops. So do you? Overall, though, I will say the one thing I would correct, even though the Green family probably isn't listening to me, the one thing I just felt was a little off was that it was overall good. But like a lot of the sessions for newbie podcasters that were useful were all at the same time.
Yeah, so then you had to pick which one you wanted to go to.
Yeah, and I felt like the other topics were pretty well spread out that weren't for people who liked podcasts and were like specifically trying to make their own, or not like podcasts, but make their own. So anyway, that was my one thing.
Yeah. So I took the only session that we didn't go to together was Kenzie went to one to learn, whereas I went to the recording of Lore.
Which I kind of wish I went to the recording of Lore, because I'm a little envious, because I have listened to that podcast once or twice.
He was literally the world's best storyteller, and it was an hour and a half, and he even had his, I can't say this word, pianist.
Yeah, his piano.
Person who plays piano behind him.
Oh, cool. I didn't know he had his own specific person. That's pretty awesome.
And so the guy was live playing the piano while he was telling all of these, folklore stories that are true and, have a twisted ending. And so it was a really fun to listen to him live. It was a really cool experience. And so while I was listening to Lore, where were you?
I was in We Love Communities, which is I thought very important, because we love you guys, and we want our podcast not to be an audience, but like a flow and vibe with you guys to like talk back with us, like get to know us, and we get to know you. We would love that. So we want it to be more of a community versus an audience. So that kind of means like we don't create in a vacuum. So we create like in a community. It's like, it's not an audience. It's like people that can give us feedback on our social media platforms, which we love. So anyway, no, I thought the community one was pretty good. Had some interesting podcasters on there. And then the rest two, we went pretty much the same. So the next one we went to was talking about tough topics. Yeah. So what did you learn out of that one?
Talking about tough topics.
Yeah.
To consider, really what I thought was a key takeaway was to consider how everybody was going to react to it, because one of the panelists was saying how they sometimes need to reach out to advocacy groups and say, hey, how would you handle blank conversation? Maybe it's a really tough topic that can be a triggering point for a lot of people. And so she was saying how sometimes they need to go to advocacy groups to kind of get another perspective about how to handle certain topics. And although we do address serious topics, just thinking about how different people are going to react, or how different people are going to take some of the things that we say, and considering everybody's opinion.
Yeah, I feel like our podcast is about human rights and empowerment. So I never want to belittle people. And I think we really have to think about that because we only want to spread positivity, I feel like. I also learned from that one, and this could be like this podcast could be a summary for someone who's just starting their own podcast. So we empower you to start your own as well. It's super fun. Megan and I love it. It's a lot of work though. But another thing when you talk about topics is be premeditative and have careful preparation.
Yep. So then after that one, what did we go to?
Then we went to criminal, right? Creating a story. We went from fan to creator.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we did leave early. We were starving. So
then we went to the crepe place.
And that's the main thing we learned. No, we're just kidding. But we had several crepes.
We had 4 crepes in total, and I had 3 of them.
The funny thing was, Megan was like, I was like, do you want to go to this crepe place? And she's like, I don't know. Like, crepes are only sweet. And I'm like, no. Like, crepes, you can put savory things. You can put in cheeses. You can put in eggs. You can put in meat.
I was totally hating on the crepe, and then I freaking devoured them.
And then you welcomed your heart. You opened your heart to the beautiful world of crepes.
So good.
You know which one I really wanted to try, and it makes me like want to try to make my own?
The apple one.
That's the salmon one.
Oh, the salmon one.
I know you're a vegetarian, but it had like butter and cheese, and then it had like spinach and salmon, and then I think cream cheese on top.
I would totally eat that. Are you kidding? I totally will eat meat whenever I am like really craving it. So I will totally eat that. My favorite was Nutella, banana, powdered sugar, and whipped
that
cream.
one's a good one.
Oh,
I love Nutella banana crepes.
Good.
So if you've learned anything,
go to the crepe place downtown Seattle.
Yeah, underneath the convention center. They're pretty dang good. So we went to criminal.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it so much. Shout out to Phoebe Judge.
Is that how the podcast is always formatted, with the way that they did it?
No, she talked more about herself. Usually it's just like a story about a person committing a criminal act. And
the whole time it's not like more than one either?
It's usually just one story about a person committing a criminal act. And it can be like funny criminal acts. Like yesterday, they told 2 stories. And the second one that Kenzie missed was this man from, I believe, the UK. He's a professional streaker, and he's streaked 550 times in his life.
That's hilarious.
He even streaked the Super Bowl, the same Super Bowl when Janet Jackson's boob came out. We didn't know it, but there was a streaker beforehand. And a website paid him to write their website name and then .com on his back.
That's hilarious.
The website paid for his ticket.
Oh, we're hearing hammering again.
Sorry, guys. The website paid for his ticket for his flight, flying from the UK to Houston, and then paid for his legal fees. And the best part is that he could have had 6 months in jail, and he went to the jury. He went to a jury. What's that called, where the jury decides what it is?
Isn't that every trial in America?
No, sometimes just a judge decides rather than a jury.
Oh, I don't know.
He went to a jury trial, and
I should know that.
And they said, his lawyer said, if they don't look at you, if none of the jurors look at you, it's a bad sign.
Oh, really?
And as the jury was
when I'm fascinated by someone, I'm like staring right at them.
As the jury walked in from deliberation to read his sentence, none of them were looking at him. And he was like, crap, I'm screwed.
You mean when they read their sentence?
Yep.
Yeah. No, but like throughout the whole time, I'm always like looking at like the person whenever there's testimony, because I'm like, oh, what's he going to do? What's he going to do? What's his reaction?
So he was like, oh my gosh, I'm about to be in jail for 6 months for streaking at the Super Bowl. And then the judge reads it and he's like, yep, you're guilty. You owe $1,000 fine. And he was like, sweet. So he only had to pay $1,000. And the website that brought him here, that paid him to do it, they said that they would cover his legal fees. And so they covered it too.
That's hilarious.
And Phoebe Judge did such a good job. She's just a good speaker.
She has a cool voice.
She has a really cool voice. And so shout out to Phoebe Judge, because I love that episode. And she has, what is her producer's name? There's a producer.
Here, it's probably on the previous page where they gave us these cute little booklets. Okay, which I really liked. It was Lauren something. Spoher. Yeah, sorry.
So both of them were really good. And then the audience got to ask them questions. And
oh, I like that.
Yep. So that was a really good one.
Today was really productive. We went on Everyone Has a Podcast. And it was moderated by Hank Green, and John Green was one of the guests. I also want to start listening to Francesca, and I don't know who her husband's name is on this list, but their podcast, it's like last name or something like that.
Patrick Condas.
Oh, was that her husband? Yeah,
Yep.
It seemed like they had a cute little podcast about their marriage. I'm trying to think. Oh, the best thing I got from that one was how to stand out. And she said shareable social clips, like tight and funny segments for like little clips on our social media, and to have quote graphics, so like an image that you took with a quote at the bottom for social media.
She also
to
said
promote back.
It could be good to post bloopers.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. And trying to push yourself to always try new things and not get complacent.
What I really liked out of this one was she was saying how, yes, everybody has a podcast now, because that's kind of true, but nobody has a podcast that's just like me and Kenzie, because me and Kenzie are two individual people bringing two individual thoughts, two individual creative ideas. And so there's no podcast that's just like ours. And so that was inspiring.
It was. After that, we went to the best one for new podcasters, and it was your next 5 years, monetization, community building, and social media. So I'm going to try to skim through and see what were the highlights from those different categories. But Meg, like the most important thing I learned, but Meg, do you want to say what you learned while I kind of skim through?
Yep. So it was presented by 3 people, Amanda McLaughlin, Julia Schifini, and Eric Silver. And Amanda and Julia have a great podcast that I really think you guys should check out. It's called Spirits. And basically, Julia is a kind of like a history buff. She studied history in college. And then Amanda is a finance girl. And so Julia tells Amanda like folklores or Greek mythology or Roman mythology.
Greek? I don't know.
All the different kinds of mythology, all the different kinds of folklore, scary stories that are out there. And then with each podcast, they have a drink that is tied to what they're talking about. So I've listened to the first 5 episodes, and they are so good. They're so funny. They're about like 15 to 20 minutes long. And this morning I was at a yoga studio cleaning the yoga studio by myself, because I clean 8 Limbs Yoga in West Seattle to get a free yoga. And so I was cleaning this place at like 6 o'clock in the morning all by myself. And I was starting to get scared because they were telling scary stories about folklore. And so I was getting scared all by myself in this yoga studio. But it's called Spirits, and you guys should check it out. And one thing that I learned from this session was that we need to support each other, because maybe there's an idea out there that if I tell our listeners to go to listen to another podcast, then they're going to start listening to that podcast instead of us. And that's not really the case at all. Like, if you think about the Serial effect, Serial being the podcast that, you know, broke all kinds of records, that brought into light so many other podcasts as well. And so so I got out of it to create community between podcasters as well, and to support each other, support podcasts that you like and that you find entertaining or maybe find positivity out of. So that's what I learned.
And to go with that, I wrote down a quote that has to relate to that lesson from the session. It says, "A rising tide lifts all boats." So if all podcasts become really popular, then it lifts all the other podcasts up.
That was beautiful, Kens.
Well, that's what she said. I'm not going to take responsibility. That's what one of the presenters on the panel said. I thought of that quote. And no, another one is word of mouth is more popular or powerful, than social media. So I'm going to ask you guys a favor, our listeners, and we really love you guys and we really love doing this for you. So I want you to do me one favor. Just pause this really quick. After I tell you what to do and text one person who you think would enjoy this content. We want to build a community of people that would actually enjoy us, and tell one person who you think might enjoy it to look up our podcast, and we greatly appreciate it. But word of mouth is most popular, and we try to promote other people too. So it's a two-way thing.
And I thought that was interesting too, because I think that our world right now is so focused on social media, and Kenzie and I tried to be active on social media as well to help promote our podcast, because really, besides word of mouth, that's the way that you do it, And so I thought it was really beneficial and powerful for them to be like, hey guys, guess what? Yeah, social media is great, but take a step back. Word of mouth is bigger.
Totally. The other things is monetization. We learned about crowdfunding, which is through Patreon, and that's something Meg and I are not experienced with, but we're considering it. And one of the things might be a reward system. So it is kind of like you reward your listeners. It's kind of like paying premium. You get a better experience if you pay for it. So we might do that in the future, but for now, I think we are enjoying just expanding our community. But that is something we might research. Another thing was sustainability. Megan, what did you take out of the sustainability to keep our podcast to continue and grow?
Basically that we need to have fun doing it, and that whenever it turns into something that we don't want to do, or something that, is more of a burden than fun, then you and I should really step back and see, okay, do we need like a week break, or do we need this to be over? And
which we're not at all close to, guys, so don't worry.
I'm still having a ton of fun, but also having monthly meetings and establishing these monthly business meetings where we don't talk about anything but the podcast, to kind of establish where the podcast is going, making sure that we're both still on the same page. And then the opposite of that, having times where we're just friends, and
which we are in real life,
where we don't say one single word with the peaceful truth,
which is very hard if you've ever been in a room with Megan and I for us to
We're not allowed to say the peaceful truth. We're not allowed to say podcasts. We're not allowed to say anything. And I think that really finding that line between being like business partners and being friends, I think that's something that you and I need to work on.
Definitely. But yeah, we always are friends first before the podcast, which I think makes in turn our podcast even more healthy. One of the things I took from, and this is something I just struggle with, imposter syndrome. I feel like an imposter by doing the podcast because I listen to podcasts. So I'm like, why am I relevant to do the podcast? And so I sometimes think, well, maybe I'm not doing the right things, and I need to think it's not dumb because it isn't. And I'm not an imposter. I am a podcaster.
And they were also saying that about Pantheon as well. Pantheon?
Oh, the crowdsourcing thing?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. To
is that the right
know
word,
that you
though?
offer value. I don't.
Parthenon.
No, that's just a famous thing.
I don't know what
We're great at this. We're so good.
Well, okay, whatever. That thing that basically
it
says it's a crowdsourcing, and there's different levels. You donate $1 a month, something happens. You donate $5 a month, you get a little bit more. You donate $25 a month, you get the premium service. And whenever they said this, they said we started ours the first day that we released our podcast. And obviously we didn't. Obviously that is not the route that we went down, because we don't even have one. We don't even know the official name of it. But I was like, I don't think that Kenzie and I could ever do that, because who are we to say, oh, we're worth your $1 or we're worth your $5, whatever. But then to step back and be like, no, we are worth it.
Yeah, and this will help us fund better equipment, and this will help us just grow and become better for you guys, because it is a second job. So it'll help us become better for you guys.
I mean, we have Australian listeners.
I can't believe it. Shout out to our Aussie friend.
I think we also had a UK listener.
Yeah.
How did you find it?
Well, we have analytics.
No, how did the Australian people find us?
I don't know. I'm not sure. So Meg, outside of PodCon, just things that I've learned recently, I wanted to share it with you, something useful my boss at my day job taught me. And I am a project manager / producer. So I found it helpful and relatable to our podcast. But it is to set like per quarter, set like 3 major goals and then set smart steps to achieve those goals. So I thought that was cool.
Smart steps. Doesn't SMART stand for something? Like R is reachable?
Maybe. I have no idea. He didn't tell me it was an acronym.
SMART steps. The S stands for something. The M stands for measurable.
Cool.
The A stands for something.
But we should.
Yeah, we should. And then each letter of SMART stands for something, and that should be what the goal is. So it should be measurable, attainable, reachable. Like, you shouldn't set goals that you can't measure, or you shouldn't set goals that are just so far out there that you're not like, one day I'm going to go to Mars. Like, it should be like something that is actually doable. And that's what makes the goal a goal. So, yeah.
Well, maybe if you're a NASA genius, then that is attainable.
True that, but not for me.
Okay. So then final thing we watched was Dear Hank and John, which is the correct way to say it. But yeah, they were the guys who thought of the podcast. It was funny, and it was something that I feel like I will start listening to. What is something you are looking forward to this week, Meg?
I'm looking forward to taking my harmonium teacher out for lunch on Sunday and for having harmonium lessons, hearing all about India, and then I'm going to start pushing some cash away to go to India 2018.
Nice. This week, I am excited we're doing like a mini, we're starting a tradition of our family Christmas, and it's with the siblings of like the Roni and Chelsea family, and we are making our own Christmas tradition and having a white elephant gift and making dinner and doing holiday things.
Nice. That's a great idea.
So I'm looking forward to that. But thank you so much for listening and for always supporting us. We want to create a community where you guys can have resources to empower yourselves as strong women or just strong human rights supporters. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Love you. Bye.